Welcome back to this Real America's Voice news break. I'm Terrence Bates. Now that President Trump has signed the bill forcing the Justice Department to release all of its files on Jeffrey Epstein, the DOJ has 30 days to comply. The trove of documents should include all files and communications related to the disgraced child predator, as well as any information about the investigation into his death. Some information about victims could be redacted for ongoing federal investigations, but investigators cannot withhold information due to, quote, embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity. A federal judge who has reviewed the case says there are about 100,000 pages to release. Taking to Truth Social after signing the bill, President Trump began naming names and pointing fingers at Democrats who were associates of Epstein. In this Truth Social post, he writes, quote, Democrat figures such as Bill Clinton, who was on the plane numerous times, Larry Summers, who, of course, has been let go from various boards, including Harvard, sleazebag political activist Reid Hoffman, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who he says took money from Epstein, Democrat Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, and many more. Perhaps the truth about these Democrats and their associations with Jeffrey Epstein will soon be revealed. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky meeting with a U.S. Army delegation in Ukraine today. The meeting comes as the Trump administration is out with a 28-point peace plan aimed at ending the war between Russia and Ukraine. The agreement would reportedly see Ukraine give up some of its land and weapons, including cutting the size of Ukraine's military. President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, along with Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, are said to have been instrumental in drafting this proposal. The plan is just now being presented to Ukrainian officials and reportedly leaves room for negotiation. This latest attempt at bringing peace to the region comes after Russian missiles and drones just killed at least 25 people in the latest round of fighting. That's a quick check of your headlines. As always, we appreciate having you along for the ride. Now, back to the Charlie Kirk Show.
Speaking the truth, no one else has the guts to say. The Charlie Kirk Show.
All right, welcome back to the Charlie Kirk Show. I'm Andrew Colvett, executive producer of the show. Blake Neff, another one of the producers here. Our not-so-secret weapon, as I like to call him. He always looks at me sideways when I say it, though. I want to tell you really quickly about our friends over at TikTok. Connection and open dialogue. These are the things that build communities. Charlie believes that. TikTok believes that. That's why TikTok has built a space where that kind of listening actually happens. People don't just post. They respond, and they build upon each other's ideas. You'll see a teacher simplifying a tough lesson so it finally clicks for the student, or a gardener sharing a trick that saved their crop. But what matters most isn't the video, it's what comes next. Someone asking a question, someone else answering with a story of their own, building upon the original idea. And suddenly, people who've never met become a community built on shared curiosity. When people listen and understand, a shift happens. Walls come down, ideas travel further, and connection, real connection, takes their place. That is what listening does. It reminds us that we're not as different as we thought we were. And that's what makes TikTok so powerful. It's a place where every post can turn into a conversation, and every conversation can make a difference. Charlie had billions and billions of views on TikTok. So that is that. We now have our next guest, Cremu. He's the author of the Cremu Substack, and you can find him on X at Cremu.
Ask him how do you pronounce that, Cremu?
Cremu, welcome to the show.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we do. We can hear you.
Okay.
You're a bit. Okay, there you are. You were a bit off center there. We'll get it. We'll get it right. But we wanted to have you on because you're a big expert on healthcare. Healthcare has totally taken over a lot of the discussion in the U.S. as one of the biggest sources of rising costs in America. You know, people are. Let's just play one of these clips. Actually, I think that'll set it up nicely.
Good primer.
How about we do? Let's just do 263.
Going to hear horrible stories. People are not going to be able to afford their insurance. I don't think even with subsidies they're going to be able to afford the premiums that are hiking up 100, 200, 300%.
Wasn't Obamacare supposed to fix that?
When people, no, well, not without the universal. I mean, there's
Affordable Care Act.
Yeah,
Affordable was the first word.
And I want to throw up this as the last primer here, Kremu. 279. This is the average annual expenditures for health insurance per household consumer unit. And you can see that big jump there right when the Affordable Care Act was implemented into law. So healthcare is far outpacing the trend that we saw before the ACA was passed. So we call it the Unaffordable Care Act. And that really is the foundation for our discussion. So, Kremu, what is going wrong with American healthcare?
So I would qualify that last bit a little bit. I would say healthcare spending isn't really growing way over what you would expect before the ACA. We're looking at different metrics there, but if you use consistent ones, it looks pretty fine. The bigger issue is that we have it just shouldn't be growing this way in the first place. It is a completely broken system in the sense that we have created incentives that to make it worse. So, wow, sorry, it's really disorienting looking at myself twice on the screen here. Let me just get rid of myself. Sorry, I'm looking at myself and seeing this is there we go.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just keep going. Okay. Just zone it out.
Yeah. So we have a lot of things in healthcare, post ACA especially, that are terrible in the sense that, for example, take the medical loss ratio requirement. This is the requirement that health insurers have to spend 80 to 90%, depending on the type of plan, so 85% of their premiums each year. So if they charge their customers X amount, they have to spend 85% of X. And the fact that they have to spend that amount is effectively a profit cap, so they have to make profits in other ways. And to make those profits, they look into other things like buying up the pharmacy benefit managers, or buying up hospitals, or sneakily changing the prices, or even overpaying for drugs in order to meet the threshold of things they have to pay for. So you end up with costs just kind of running everywhere. You end up with incentives for vertical integration, such that they're buying up everything else, and the number of competitors that comes into the market is very, very small. Because again, who's going to invest in a company, a new company that has to spend 85% of its revenues every year? That's not a very good investment. But there's a lot of other issues. The ACA also, for example, had a lot of stuff that was informed by small, kind of crappy studies. So there was this idea that came about as an example of this, where hospitals run by doctors would be lower performing, and the reality was they actually tend to be higher performing. But the ACA, when it was written, this idea was not based on good empirical evidence. It was based on bad evidence. So they ended up banning doctors from establishing new physician-run hospitals.
Wow.
There's a lot of things in there that are just kind of very bad.
But Kremu, that seems like it should be illegal. How could you ban somebody from starting a business? I don't understand. Is this like a real ban, or you just can't get access to insurance funds or something?
No, it's a real ban. Unfortunately, you cannot start new ones. There are some existing physician-run hospitals that predate the ACA's ban going into effect, but you can't start new physician-run hospitals. And that's a specific thing. So if you want to give up being a practicing physician, you can still start a hospital, but you can't both be a practicing physician and run the hospital.
That's so interesting. So I guess just big picture, there's a lot of debate. The GOP in Trump's first term tried to repeal and replace Obamacare. They failed, thanks to our late senator here. But I guess people talk a lot about rising costs, but if there were targeted reforms that the Republican Party could start advocating, what do you think some of the best ones would be?
Tons. So a lot of the problem is that we have good ideas that have been actually supposed to be put into effect. For example, price transparency is the law of the land right now. If you go to a hospital, they are required to provide you with a credible list of all the prices before any operation is done on you. You are supposed to be given a price that is reasonable and that you will end up paying, because once they, put the number out there, they have to charge that for you, unless some reasonable complication comes up. But the law is not enforced. The regulation for price transparency was supposed to go into effect on October 1st. And I looked around at a sample of local hospitals, and I found, hey, you guys still aren't transparent about your prices. It's a lot of the issue with this stuff is that we don't actually enforce the rules, which is bizarre. I don't know. Like, what do you say about that at the end of the day?
That sounds like a good chance to do populism, you know, have the Trump admin just sue a big hospital or like perp walk some random like official at like a really big hospital.
When was that law? When was that law passed into law that was supposed to go into effect on October 1st?
So that was a regulation. The law that provided the regulation with power is like very old. I think it's like a decade old. If I recall correctly.
Did that get caught up in like the government shutdown or something? I mean, or we're just
no, it predated it.
There's
October
just not
1st.
a mechanism to enforce it. The Trump administration should absolutely start ensuring this.
Yeah. Well, what else? Yeah. What else though? Yeah, we cut you off there a bit.
There are tons of things. So, for example, patients are actually entitled to all of your data. If a doctor generates some data and goes in your EHR, you are supposed to be able to get access to that. You should be able to ask your physician and have your physician give that to you in some format that can be used by you, the patient. The same thing applies to the CMS's CLIA certified labs. So like IVF clinics, if a parent has some sequencing done in like one of their embryos, they should be able to get that data. But they don't. In fact, I think it was September 14th, if I'm recalling the date correctly, RFK put out a little video saying that patients are entitled to their data, and at some date in the future, there'd be a little, not a hotline, but like a little form online that you can go fill out to report when data is not provided to you when you ask for it, and they just don't do it. So it's not even things that are high cost that aren't being enforced. It's also things that are just good, like from a patient rights perspective, that just nobody follows the rules because there are enforcement mechanisms, to be clear. CMS can really start hitting hospitals very hard. They can hit providers in ways that make their pocketbooks scream, but they don't. And that is the big issue at the end of the day, is that they have enforcement mechanisms, they don't enforce them for all sorts of things. Another thing is, for example, site neutral payments. So if you are running a hospital chain and you buy up a clinic, you can charge hospital prices at that clinic location, even if they're totally separate. You just bought the location. You didn't change any way it's run, but that allows you to charge the hospital rates you're associated with the chain. Like that sort of thing should be outlawed. And it was supposed to be outlawed on October 1st. But guess what's still in effect? Non-neutral payments. It's absurd.
So Kremu, it feels like you're sort of painting a picture that the health industry is plagued by death of a thousand cuts. There's maybe isn't one silver bullet, but you know we were
talking
talking
death of a thousand cuts. It's so big. It seems like they just feel that it's so big and so impenetrable they can just ignore.
They can just
rules.
ignore. But so we have to.
That's right.
There has to be an initiative, though, from probably the highest levels of our government to start enforcing some of these regulatory changes that are supposed to benefit the patients. So here's something we talked about in hour one, that a lot of the problems in the country you could sort of trace back to illegal migration, illegal immigrants. How much of the rise in healthcare prices could you trace back to illegal immigrants on the dole or within the system, or is that not a driver in your opinion?
Not a big driver. The most liberal estimate that I've seen that's credible is about 0.9%, and that's stretching it, honestly. I think it's not that much. The main cost drivers have to do with old people. Old people are the biggest parts here, and the fact that we have bad incentives for cost control, and we don't allow certain types of cost control to even be put into place. So the AMA is really your bigger problem here. Most of your growth is provider-side rents, and that means the payments that go to doctors that are way in excess of what the doctors, the care they're providing is worth. That's most of your issue. And we could lower provider-side rents by allowing more physicians. But we have placed an effective cap on the rate of growth, not on the actual number of slots, but on the rate of growth in Medicare funding for residency slots. So the number of doctors who can actually come in and compete with the doctors and lower the rents and make it so they're paid less, but they provide more because there are going to be more of them, is limited. It's been limited since 1994. And we just don't change this rule.
What happened in 94? What happened in 94?
This is amazing. So the AMA argued there was going to be a surplus of doctors. There were going to be too many doctors, and that this would cause a big problem. And you have to think, how can there be a surplus of doctors? Don't we always need more doctors? And the answer is, yeah, of course. But they managed to somehow convince Congress this was an issue that would impact the quality of care when it makes no sense. And then they got these limits set in place. And now they argue, to get away from the fact that they did this, they argue, well, we don't limit the actual number of residency slots but they ignore that, yes, there's still limitations on the growth in the number of slots and the funding mechanisms available to create more slots outside of Medicare funding. So they created a broken system where we can't actually fix the issue with provider-side grants, which is roughly a third of all of the spending problem.
I think we should go through the break on this.
Well, no,
if
we're going to go
possible.
through the break.
Yeah.
Really quick, hang
love
right
to.
there, Kramu. I'm going to tell our audience about one of our partners, and we'll get back to you in just one second. When you're buried in credit card and loan debt, it's human nature to put it off and procrastinate. I've been there and say, I'll deal with it later. If that's you, here's a hidden fact the debt strategy experts at Done With Debt shared with me. They discovered a little-known strategy that works in your favor, dramatically reducing or even erasing your debt altogether. They aggressively engage everyone you owe money to, and they do it right now, right in the fall, because they know which lenders and credit card companies are doing year-end accounting and need to cut deals. They even know which ones have year-end audits and need to get your debt completely off their books. That means you need to get started with Done With Debt now, right now, this fall. Done With Debt accomplishes this without bankruptcy or new loans. In fact, most clients end up with more money in their pocket the first month. Get started now while you still have time. Go to donewithdebt.com and talk with one of their specialists for free. Visit donewithdebt.com. Donewithdebt.com. More with Kramu, the statistician, the contrarian, the guy who sees connections others don't. We're going to keep going through the breaks.